Your Help presents Stress-Free Living with Ray Savage and Mr. Stress-Free, Ratanjit S. Sandhi. This audio program is an unscripted and unrehearsed conversation between Ray and Ratanjit. It is shared with you in hope of adding value to your life. We encourage you to listen to this program in its entirety to receive the full impact of its message. Sit back, relax, open your heart, mind, and soul to this edition of Stress-Free Living.
This is Stress-Free Living. Ray Savage with you, along with Ratanjit Sandhi. Ratanjit, how are you this fine morning?
Wonderful, Ray. And you are at a remote location today, and you still look good.
Thank you. I am on remote location. That is the beauty of using the Zoom system or whatever the new technology that people may be using for this, where we can be in separate houses or separate buildings, but even in separate locations around the world. And so let's talk about that for just a moment. If you are listening to us on radio, AM, FM radio in Cleveland, we welcome you. If you are listening to us on the internet stream anywhere around the world at wintradio.com, we welcome you. And so everybody knows that you can do that either way on a live basis every Saturday morning as we broadcast. We also do post all the shows on YouTube at Stress-Free Living Radio. So if you miss any shows, if you've missed the ones in the past and you'd like to, you can watch or listen to those through our YouTube channel. And then you also can join us on our Zoom calls. And the Zoom link is available on the radio station website. And you're able to join us as we have friends with us here today on that call. And as I'm on that call today from a conference that I am attending in beautiful, sunny, humid Florida today. So Ratanjit, with all of that, let's get into our show. Our regular listeners, viewers know that we have been talking about jobs for the last 3 weeks and the job market in this country, and more specifically, why people are quitting their jobs in record numbers. Millions and millions of people are quitting their jobs. And there are some estimates that say as many as 40% 45%, 48%, depending on the survey, will be quitting. And when we talked about some of the alternatives to that, some of the ways that things must change, not only in the United States with the job market to be able to get people to return to work, but also on a global basis. And you talked about wealth creation over job creation. And it was a really interesting concept that we explored a little bit, but we really didn't kind of come up with that until the end of the show. So thought we would talk more about wealth creation and what that means in the workforce with jobs, but also an interesting twist perhaps on it is that, is there poverty in wealth? Is there poverty that also still will be there for wealth, even if we switch over to a wealth creation mode? Is that going to be enough for people just to get the money, or is it about more than that? So that's the launch. Is there anything that you want to add, just because that last topic was so intense? Is there anything else that you want to perhaps add about that first before we move on?
No, I think that's a huge topic. We can talk almost every week, and the things are changing. There are so many facts which are influencing the job market. But today we want to focus on the topic, the poverty of wealth. So you see, the thing is that if you have a scarcity mindset, and if you are not, you're trying to become wealthy because you don't like poverty. But if the mindset is focused in part in poverty, more wealth actually exposes it more. You become poorer in mindset. In other words, you become more greedy, you become more stingy, and that is the mindset of poverty, which reflects through even if you have billions of dollars.
I'd like to take it back on that topic because, as you well know, the overwhelming majority of people are not financially wealthy.
Right.
And I hope today we also can talk about that wealth doesn't have to just be about cash in the bank or cash in your wallet, or how many possessions you have. That there's a lot of ways that we can describe what wealth really means. But still, the core topic really, when people think of the word wealth, they think of having money. So the overwhelming majority of people that are at any one time in a meeting, in a room, in an organization, on this phone call, listening on the radio, they're not wealthy. They aspire to become wealthy, and most people, and they always hope for the day when they don't have to worry about paying their bills. They don't have to worry about the house payment, the car payment, and having enough money to go on vacation and all those kind of things. So it's hard for them to really, for any of these people, and I'm in that category. I do not consider myself financially wealthy. For people in that mindset, the idea of having monetary wealth is really, it's a great thought. It's motivational for us to continue working, to try to move in that direction, to do our investments properly, to be wise about our spending and our saving and those kind of things. So it's hard for, I believe, most of the people listening to say, wealth is bad. There's greed. I mean, I think most of us are saying, when I have money, I'll be happy to share it with other people. I'll be happy to, if I win the lottery, I'll give checks to my kids. I'll give checks to charitable foundations. I'll help anybody who needs it. Why do you think that it makes us greedy?
Well, see, even you talked about winning a lottery. The statistics of lottery winner. Many of them end up losing everything. They lose their family, they lose their spouse, they lose their wealth, they end up filing bankruptcy. Many of them end up going to extreme to commit suicide, and all because they got this wealth and suddenly did not know how to cope with it. So wealth in itself is only a resource, Ray, and the mindset of ownership itself is erroneous. When we think we own something, that is the most misunderstood thought process. Because in this life, when I can't even own my own human body, how can I own anything? And then we know that regardless of whether you are billionaire or trillionaire, when you go at the end, you go empty-handed. You cannot take anything with you. So all these resources are really gifted to us or allocated to us. And once we call them mine, our mindset become contaminated, because suddenly greed comes in, suddenly ego comes in, and suddenly you think you are invincible. You can start doing things. That is why many of these tremendously, supposedly wise people with a lot of money end up doing stupid things. So,
I hear you. We've had some segments of this kind of conversation in the past, but for those people that maybe weren't with us on those calls, let's go back to the principle that you just said, is that we don't own anything. Because again, for most of us listening, we're very proud that we own a house. We own our car. We own our clothes. We own our furniture that's in our houses. The list goes on and on and on of things that we paid for with cash that we earned. or somehow that we received. And we went to the store, or we went to the bank for the case of our house, or we went to a car dealership, and maybe we had to finance it over 4 years, but we bought a car. And the fact is that we paid money, we made a transaction, and we now have the title that says we own the car. We now have the title and maybe the mortgage that says we still owe half of it, but we have, we own our house. Now, I agree we can't take it with us. I certainly, we all know that. Nobody comes out of this world alive. But along the way, if we're here for 50 years or 80 years or 90 years, we get to keep what we own. So, I think I need to better understand what you mean by that, because all those books behind you that we see on the Zoom call, you've got a lot of books in that library. You own those books. Those are yours. If I took those away from you, you might let me because you like me sometimes, but still, they're your books and you would choose to give those to me.
Well, see, when we migrated from the Stone Age, from the caves to what we today call civilization, we made a temporary arrangement so that we can allocate resources to people, including your home, your car, your airplane, or whatever you want to utilize them. Ultimately, our objective, which is not understood, if it is not realized that everything which is given to us is there to ultimately utilize, to make us efficient, to serve the humanity. If we get off of that understanding, then all these resources which we have end up becoming a liability. You see highly accomplished artists, or rock stars, or businessmen. A lot of people have earned tremendous amount of money, and yet their personal happiness is not there. They go through multiple divorces, their family do not talk to them, and many of them end up going into depression in spite of all this money. In the extreme cases, they end up committing suicide. So once we do not follow the protocol of our basic understanding, so look, we are here for a temporary time. So we have to ask this question: what is my purpose? Is my purpose to gather this money? Yeah. You see, if you are starved, you have always had minimum one-time meal, if that, in 2 days, and you grew up like that, suddenly somebody takes you to a restaurant, and all these food are in front of you, and you begin to eat those things, and because you have not tasted any of those, and my goodness, you keep on eating, what happens? You're going to get sick. So now, same thing with money. Money is a great resource. It's like education. Education is also wealth. Understanding is also wealth. Having a relationship is also wealth. And realizing who you are is the ultimate wealth. But if all these wealths are not utilized, not understood, that they are merely allocated to us for a short period of time, and they can be taken away. You have seen many of these billionaires falling for bankruptcy.
Right.
So,
but I still, you've diverted a little bit, and I appreciate what you've been saying, and I'm glad you did mention that there's a lot of other ways that we can be wealthy and have other things that are ours. But in all of those cases, I don't understand the distinction between owning and not owning, because, unless you're just saying it from a total spiritual sense, but I mean, from a worldly sense, don't I own my home? I mean, I've been, I had to pay for it over many years. I wasn't able just to buy it with cash, but for month after month after month, year after year after year, I made a house payment until I finally owned my house. And so don't I own that? I mean, in the worldly sense, that possession belongs to me, right? And my wife?
Well, it does. But now if you try to, you are in a neighborhood. So you own your house and you can do whatever you want with this house, right?
Right.
So if you want to burn your house, can you do that?
I mean, I would be crazy too, but yes, if I wanted to burn it down, I could burn it down.
You're going to expose your neighbors into jeopardy. You can't, because ultimately, whatever your ownership has to not interfere with others' freedom. So if you burn your house, you're very closely tied to next home. And obviously the flame are going to inflame the other house and you're going to burn your neighbor's house. So you cannot do that, although you own the house.
Okay, so I'll buy that. So I would need to try to get a permit, and they probably wouldn't get it because they said my house was too close to my neighbors. So okay, I'll buy that. But I could paint my house. I could change the color of it. I could put, certain trees in front of it and make it look nicer. Or I could paint it purple, or I could paint it orange. Even though I don't like it, I could paint it orange because I have it. It's mine. Not really, Ray. In some neighborhoods, you cannot go wild on how your house looks. You cannot. You're now in Solon, for example. If you don't mow your lawn, you'll be penalized. But you own your lawn. How come you cannot live without mowing your lawn? So it has to look decent in the neighborhood. If your house is not painted for several years, it is peeling off, you will be penalized. So you own your house. You can do whatever you want. What happened to the ownership? So ultimately, we are part of a bigger society, and everything is allocated, and what we call ownership is allocation permanently. So you can transfer that allocation to a different thing. You can sell your house and buy a car. So you can transfer that allocation into different things, but ultimately, you really have been granted the use of that property after you have earned the privilege. And the privilege is reflected through the money you earn. Somebody has paid you for the services you rendered, so they gave you money. And that you can transfer ultimately your know-how, your skills into what we call as money. And through that, you can increase your allocation of whatever, however. So we are given the freedom to decide what we like to have under our control. But ultimately, remember, they are nothing more than allocation. And our life would be much better if we understood that. We will have better peace of mind if we understood that. And if we really understood that all that comes from our capability to add value, whether it is adding value to a company, but ultimately we are adding value to the society. And our wealth gets higher. So that is the formula which everybody uses. You come up with a product or idea which would, in the light, in the eyes of public, adds value or satisfy their need or satisfy their desire. So there is a market for that.
and you can sell that. And as a consequence, you can make profit and you have higher wealth. But ultimately, the bottom line is that all our wealth are created through our capability of adding the higher value.
All right, we're going to come back in just a moment. This is stress-free living. One of the biggest things that stresses people, it's probably number one on really anybody's daily list, is the inability to pay their bills, inability to do the things that they want to do from a financial standpoint. But as we pointed out, there's other ways of being wealthy too, and being in poverty. You can have all the money in the world, as you said earlier, and yet you're still not happy. You're still not content with the wealth that you want to have in other areas of life. So we're exploring that a little bit more today, and we will continue to talk about the aspiration, if we do have it, of being wealthy. Do we own anything? Is Ratanjit right? Do we own our relationships as well as our finances and our homes and our possessions? We'll talk much more about this on Stress-Free Living. We'll be right back.
Dr. March, you can join us by unmuting. We have 2 minutes to get your comment.
If anybody would like to, unmute yourself and you can just make a comment or ask a question.
I'm glad to. So I think what Ray is also talking about is, it's one thing if you've earned enough so that you can think about, I understand about adding value. And I think when I'm practicing, one of the things that keeps me going at age 68, almost 69, is not about I'm where I need to be financially, but I feel like I can add value in terms of people's dentistry, in terms of health. They believe in something that was previously very difficult for them. And quite frankly, that's one of the reasons I keep going. And so I think of this added value. But I think that the disconnect is Ray's also addressing people who don't have, who are struggling to make enough to live. And that's their big concern. So it's not that you can be wealthy and miserable. It's that they just need enough to get by, and they're wondering, how do they get by and move forward? And I think that's where this little disconnect is. I'm done talking. Thanks.
Thank you, Doctor. All right, good. I'm going to harp back on that because I think he's right, Ratanjit. I think you're coming to a perspective on wealth that's a bad thing, and I think there's a whole lot of people that look at it as a good thing. And so we need to make a distinction that says, when does wealth become bad? If or does it not become bad for some people? Can wealth be a good thing even if you have a lot of it? It seems like it's a really good thing, I'm sure, to a lot of people. They would love to have that problem of being wealthy. So let's talk to the masses in that regard here. Thank you, Steve.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
All right. And I think we are looking for, we are back on Stress-Free Living. Ratanjit and Ray Sandwich with you today. And we appreciate you being with us, however you are listening and being a part of our show live or recorded. Thank you so very much for being part of Stress-Free Living every week. Ratanjit, in talking with some of our Zoom visitors here during the break, they actually kind of supported what I have been talking about. And so we're going to go back down that path because, again, most people are not wealthy. Most people in society, the overwhelming number of them, are either below the poverty line. I think you've used a statistic of 40-some% of people are living paycheck to paycheck or below. And then there's that next probably 40% of people that if they missed, I think 3 paychecks is the number that I have heard last. Even CEOs of companies, there's many people that if they miss 3 paychecks in a row, they would be broke. So, you're probably talking about 90% of the people that are listening right now that would say being wealthy is, I'll take that problem any day. I would love to be wealthy financially and not have to have all of these monetary worries. So I think it's hard for anybody in those 90% categories to listen to us talk and say, you guys you must be billionaires and you have no idea what it's really all about, because having money is not a bad thing. I would love to have money. It's much better than being poor.
Well, first of all, I think I'm not talking about money being bad or good, Ray. Our topic is poverty of wealth. I'm talking about the mindset of people who have tremendous amount of money and still their mindset is poor. They're parked in poverty. And I totally agree with you that you cannot, if you don't have paycheck to paycheck income, or you don't have enough money to pay for your bills and all that, that is not what I totally sympathize with that. And that is the curse of our society. But where that curse comes from is because of the poverty of wealth. Because look at from 87 to today, the paycheck increase for the CEO is 1,008%. And the common workers increase in the salaries only 11%. We have in this country 877 billionaires with a total net worth of $4 trillion. And we have 20.2 million millionaires with a net worth of $158 trillion. And our GDP shows that we are the richest country on earth. But because we are still parked in poverty, all the rich people are parked in poverty. They want more. What poverty tells you is, I don't have enough. That is fundamentally the poverty indicates. And as a consequence, 43% of our population cannot even afford day-to-day expensive of healthcare, childcare, food on the table, rent. And then we have over 40 million people who are below poverty level. This is indicating the poverty of the wealth. I'm not saying that anything is, so I was misunderstood. So.
Okay, and it's not really, I don't mean to say you're misunderstood, because that's what you've said all along. So my point is that, well, you're a businessman. You operated business. You had employees work underneath you for many years, and they relied on the job that you created for them. And as the owner of the company, you took the responsibility to say, I will pay you every day, every week, and every couple of weeks I'll issue a paycheck. And they didn't have to worry about that. They knew that as long as they did their job, they would receive that check from you. And if there were months that it was tight for you financially, you had to worry about it. You had to figure out how to do that and pay them, but you always made sure that they were paid. Maybe that even meant that sometimes in a business, the owner is not going to pay himself. But he will make sure that he pays his people. My point is that the system that we're using, that many people are making a lot of money on, there's also that same system is paying other people. And so, to look at it and say, well, all the wealthy people are there's an injustice here, because you've mentioned all the billionaires and all the millionaires. Many of those own businesses, and they've worked to accumulate that wealth. I mean, are you buying into the system where those people should give all that money back in taxes and let it be redistributed to the people that don't work and that are in that 80% level, that they live paycheck to paycheck, or they only can afford a couple? I mean, that's where the disconnect is.
No, I think fundamentally, Ray, my mother used to say something very, very amazing to me, and I never understood that until now. She would say that, look, all your successes, no exception, are in spite of you, never because of you. See, we come on this earth as a child, so we need support. Our parents bring us up, and then we go to school, our teacher teaches, and then we go to college, we learn skills, and then we start working, and at a workplace, we are trained to make things happen. And then through that training, eventually we end up starting a business. But then we have a team who contributes. No matter if you have an idea, all the skill needed to run that business you do not have. You have to hire an accountant, you have to hire a marketing guy, you have to hire R&D person. So all the success which you claim because you are owner are not really yours. So it is only fair that we distribute and pay them accordingly. Now, imagine, we talked in our last show, if a corporation, we have an example of Henry Ford. Henry Ford was a real capitalist because he created capability in his employees to buy a car. So he increased customer base. So now if a corporation gives third of the company to its employees, naturally their wealth increases and their buying capacity increases. They will not only buy the products, but they'll buy other product made by other manufacturers. Suddenly, our overall economy enhances. Although you own 2/3 of the company, but your 2/3 would have much higher value if you have these people who are working with you, who are bringing this value to your company, are made a better equipped with finances. And also their morale goes up. They begin to, you can cut down on managing a manager and managing another manager. Layers of management goes away because these are now highly motivated, concerned people working with you. So it's not that you give away your money. It is the best way to make more money.
So I think what we're talking about here is much more of an attitude, much more of a fundamental ways that we look at and live our lives than the I don't want to say practicality. That's not a good choice because you're also trying to be practical with this. But I think most people are listening to this, viewing this from one of two perspectives. The lens that we probably are viewing this either are, if there is someone that's very wealthy listening to this right now, they're saying, everybody's trying to take my money. Government wants my money. Charities want my money. My employees want more money. Everybody wants my money. And you know, even if they have a lot, they're thinking, I have to even get more because everybody's going to keep taking it away from me. They're going to raise all the taxes. I mean, we're going to have some of the biggest tax changes here probably over the next year that we've seen in decades. So, you know, you've got that element that says you're taking my money. You're taking my money. So it kind of forces them to say they need more. And then you've got the great majority of people that are listening that are saying, you know, I wish I had money. Money isn't bad at all. Money's great and I need more of it. And so the idea of having wealth to them is also a wonderful idea. So we've got everybody probably listening, with a few exceptions, that are saying this whole idea of having a lot of money is necessary and I would love to have it. I'd love to have more of it. So, in kind of the real world, your first impulse when you would hear this kind of a topic is resistance, because we do need more money to be able to do the things that we want to do, to have the things that we want to have, even to have the money that says I can give to my church or I can give to my favorite charity. I'm able to do those things because I have money. So when we come back from the break, we have to go to a break. When we come back from the break, I guess I'd like to understand more about the mindset, more about what it's going to take for us to realize that we need to have wealth from a different perspective. What the things are that would make us wealthy, including money, that we have to look at as, again, through a different lens, through a different perspective. And we're going to come back in just a moment and understand, is there really poverty in wealth, or can wealth be a wonderful, good thing for us to have in our life? We'll be right back with more Stress-Free Living. All right, we are at our break. Maybe I'm talking in circles here today. I'm trying to bring it back down to something we can all relate to. So if anyone would like to comment again, we have about 90 seconds.
So Ray, if you don't mind, Steve Marsh jumping in one more.
We love your input.
No, thank you. I just don't want to overdo it. But I was listening to Susie Orman one morning not too long ago. I was up at 6 o'clock, and she made the point, and this may be something you could use, is that, remember, money's only one thing, it's security. It isn't about houses, it isn't about cars. Having enough money is security. Everything else is immaterial. So that was her whole point. It's nice to have these things, but people want to have enough to be secure, and then we can talk about maybe added value, yada, yada. But I think that was her point, and I took that to heart. I thought that was a very good point.
Yeah, and that would seem to solve some of the distinction between what we're talking here. I mean, if you did have enough that you felt secure and not threatened, not fearful all the time. So we can come back. Ratanjit, because I'm still skeptical. Do you know, I have a Larry in the waiting room. Any idea who that might be? I'm concerned we're going to get pranked again today.
Yeah, try it.
Well, I can't, because if I bring them in and then they say something or do something. So if you do hear from Larry today, we'll have to acknowledge that we apologize. Can't take a chance during the show.
Okay. So please join us before the show so that we can screen properly.
Yeah.
Because we had today.
We are back on Stress-Free Living. Ratanjit and yours truly, Ray Samich, with you, talking about a subject that hasn't become more clear to me, to be very honest about it. Over all of these years, we usually are connected on the same page, knowing exactly which way we're going. But on this one, I kind of have a lot of different thoughts that are not fully put in perspective. And again, we thank our team here, our colleagues that are joining us on the Zoom call that we can interact with and open the microphones during the breaks. And I think a valid, very valid point was made, Ratanjit, and maybe this supports what I was trying to say better than I said it. If we have a basic level of security, if we use the core amount of money that gives us a place to live, gives us clothes on our back, gives us food on our table, and allows us to have some of the basics nowadays that you need to have. You need to be able to have health care. You need to have insurance if you drive a car and own a house. Those kind of things. If you get security there so that you know you've got those covered, and you have those covered even if you get sick. So, for a year, you've got enough that says, my family will live, it'll have a place to live and food to eat, and the basics of life. Isn't that a vital part of our life to be able to say, I have that security, and that I have to first take care of that for my family. I have to make sure that if I get sick and can't go to work, that my household and my family will still be able to live their lives while I am ill and unable to work. Isn't that kind of the core wealth that we have in our life that we all deserve and we all do need?
Absolutely, Ray. Security is essential. What I'm saying right from the very beginning, I made a first comment was that insecurity is not a factor of money. A lot of wealthy people, billionaires, are insecure. Security, yes, money gives you initially place to live, and you cannot live without essentials. And that security is a different kind. But if you are not secure internally, I came to this country with $8, Ray. Where was my security? My security was not tied to money. My security was tied to my internal being. I was assured internally that somehow or other I'm going to be all right. Somehow or other I'm going to make it happen. So once your focus is, if your mind is convinced that I can't go any further till I have money, there's one mindset. There's another mindset that my mission and purpose of life is to add value. If I focus on that, money will come. So if you are on that mindset, then you can get rid of the security. Look at all these people. There are stories after stories. People have come from different countries, or people have nothing. They started from poverty and started an idea, started a business, became millionaires, billionaires. So that is because they had some security inside of them, which is much more powerful than all the security in the world. I do not want to undermine the pain and suffering when you don't have anything. I don't want to say that that is okay. But until you have security, all the money in the world, all the fame in the world cannot give you that. That is a false security. And if you are looking for internal security, you must understand that you are not this human body. You are the power within the human body, and same is the power which exists in everyone else. It clarifies your purpose. You are here to serve that power present in everyone. You have a passion. That passion is to figure out, how do I add value? How do I make a difference? So in that text, no work becomes inferior. No job is less or more. You are focusing constantly on adding value from moment to moment. On one given day, adding value could be cleaning the floors. Other day, listening to somebody. Other day, you are manufacturing something. So ultimately, if your inner security comes from adding value, which makes you have a higher self-worth. Self-worth is not net worth. Self-worth only comes to us what I really think of me. In absence of my true self-worth, I count money and evaluate myself as a rich person or a poor person. But if you have the true self-worth, which I had when I landed here with $8. And you know the story. And I started my business in with borrowed $2,000, Ray, borrowed. And I made money for the first year because I figured out a way to add value.
This has made it more clear to me, which I am grateful for. The security that you're talking about, when I was talking about security based on one of our Zoom callers, Steve, that had brought that up, was based on financial security, based on, having enough money in the bank to be able to cover our basic essential needs. I think what your definition of the security that you have just talked about is an inner security, the mindset, if we want to put it that way, the foundational security that we know our purpose, we know why we're here and what we're supposed to be doing. And I totally see how that can then be your guiding force and affect when you do make money and you're wealthy, then you still get those guiding mindset principles, and vice versa. When you don't have money, but you're still secure in your purpose, then the wealth doesn't matter as much. I mean, you still can't go hungry and not be able to eat, and you still need a roof over your head. But there's a lot of people, as you said, that security of themselves, the security in their mindset, eventually allowed them to also be secure financially because they use it as a motivator. They use it as a purpose and a reason to wake up every morning and not give up, but to get up. So, maybe that's what we should be talking about, for instead of talking about wealth, talking about having security of purpose in our life, which seems to be far more important than actually having possessions.
You see, there are many examples. We have big corporation here, Lubrizol, and one of their president, I don't know his name, he started as a janitor in the company. And working there, he would attend evening classes. Eventually, he graduated from college and did his master's, and eventually he raised his capacity to add value, and eventually he became the CEO of that company. So if he had lived with that I'm a janitor, I can't do anything, I only get so much paid, and focus only on what you can do with that money, he would have not become the CEO of the company. So you can see history after history after history, that people, ordinary people, who have made enormous contribution through making a product or a service, and because of their internal connection with their purpose, because of their inner security, having higher self-worth rather than focusing on net worth. And today what has happened is that we have gone so far into the net worth scenario that we are not even comprehending what is most important for our people, for our psyche, for our stability, for our working of our society. We should give higher self-worth to people. Our education system does not give that. Our jobs where we work does not give that. Our relationship do not give that. And initially you talked about if we don't own anything, do we own any relationship? My idea is that if I ask you how many friends you have, you said, I have several friends. Fundamentally, you cannot have friends, Ray. You can only be a friend. All your friends are friends because you added value to them. So it is the same way, you cannot have a spouse. You can only be a spouse. Our mindset is, this is my wife, this is my children, this is my house. In reality, you cannot have anything. You can only be a value-adding entity, and it is through your value-adding entity you become a spouse, you become a father, you become a mother, you become a friend, and you become a value-adding employee. You become a value-adding member of our society. And as a consequence, your self-worth goes higher, and eventually that can be cashed into net worth.
Ratanjit, I'm so glad that I think you have brought this back to where it should have been in the beginning, but maybe we had to take this tougher road to get here. You and I have agreed, I think everybody can agree, that there's more divisiveness in this world now than ever before. There just seems to be people opposing forces out there at every level. And one of those areas of opposition is between those who have and those who have not. And so, you do have the wealthy versus the not wealthy. Let's just put it in that simplistic category. And I was starting that in this show, I was really starting with that mindset. And you kind of have two camps then. You have those that are wealthy that as you acknowledge, aren't necessarily happy, aren't necessarily fulfilled, gratified, still having all kinds of bad things happening. And then you have the other camp of those who aren't wealthy, who aren't happy, who aren't content, who are fearful, who are worried about maybe the next meal. And the logical thing in this day and age is that divisiveness then, that distinction between these two camps, puts them as opposing each other. Well, you have too much money. Well, it's you don't have any money because you're not working, and don't blame me because I have it, and don't take my money because you don't have any. And so there is, I think, this divisiveness in monetary terms, but there's also divisiveness right now in all kinds of other areas of political opinions and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What you've just done over the last few minutes is that you brought this back down to a principle that says wealth is not ownership of anything. It's not ownership of money. And that this is, whether you are in either of those camps I just mentioned, or any other camps with your opinions and your current position, we are so maybe possessed by our possessions or our lack of possessions that we are not possessing the understanding of what wealth really means. And the ability to have wealth around us is only going to come and stay with us if we have the mindset that you're talking about. Is that a fair summary of where we've gone in the show?
Yes. So ultimately, our insecurity comes from not having true self-worth. And self-worth can only be, it's not a mindset, it is only earned by doing the right things. You begin to see that confidence building up. Your security comes to you by doing the right things.
All right. Ratanjit, thank you for, especially for adding that vital point there at the end. Thank you for another interesting conversation. Went all over the place today, but I think we ended up making the point that really does add a lot of value to each and every one of us. Thank you for sharing your thoughts again with us today.
Thank you, Ray.
And thank you, everybody, for tuning in and being part of our program, our Zoom listeners, and however you're listening, we certainly appreciate your support. And remember, we're out there at stressfreeliving.radio.com. No, Stress Free Living Radio on YouTube is where I want to go if you want to share these shows with others. Remember, folks, we're all playing the same game. Have a great day.